Welcome to Real Marriage.
So if you're on our mailing list, you got two incredible things we sent out to you on Friday. The first thing is the Sunday night meeting agenda, and we talked about that a little bit last week. It's really essentially where you sit down and you meet once a week on Sunday night with your spouse, and you talk about the week ahead, and you talk about things that are going on in your relationship. And it's meant to be used with the show as well, so you can talk about the topics that we bring up in this show, bring new conversation, fresh ideas into your relationship. The second tool that we sent you, if you're subscribed to our email list, is the Marriage Expectations Worksheet. And we're going to talk a little more about how to use that worksheet later on in the show. If you have not gotten that email, then maybe check your spam or promotions folder, or maybe you're not subscribed to our email. We want to make sure that every time you show up, you get the tools that we're going to use in the show so that you can have them and just print them out, save them. You can have them in your marriage workbook. But go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. If you're on our Facebook page right now, look at the top right. You'll see a blue button that says join. No, sign up. It says sign up. Click on the sign up button and then make sure you get all the things you need. And if you do that tonight, if you do that in the next few minutes, you'll get both of those worksheets so that you'll have them and you won't be left behind. We don't want you to miss out from those tools.
That's right. It's automatic. You just sign up. It'll automatically be sent to you. So
okay.
Good deal. So let's get started. So marriage expectations.
Yes.
So what are marriage expectations?
Well, marriage expectations are a couple different things. The first thing is it could be an expectation that you have on your spouse that you just kind of believe that they should do for you or they should think for you. Like example, it could be you just expect that your spouse picks up after themselves. It could also be an expectation that you have on your relationship as a whole. You just believe, you just kind of assume that your marriage you have, the relationship you have, is going to be the same as the one that your parents had. Or maybe you have another idea of what the relationship will be like. Maybe you have like a kind of fantasy couple, for example, that you have. You're like, oh, our relationship's being just like that. And that's another expectation on the relationship that one could have. So that's the examples of what an expectation in marriage could be.
That's right. And it's an expectation you have that you think should happen, but may not be the reality of your relationship.
Yes.
So those are kind of the free-flowing expectation definitions that we've come up with.
Right.
And so here's what this actually looks like.
Yeah.
So if you could share what that looks like on a daily basis.
So it could be something like, I just expect my spouse to pick up after himself. You know what I mean? Like that's just that expectation that I have that he will do that. That's
right. Some could be my spouse is partially responsible for my happiness.
Yes, just
that is an expectation.
So it's not anything bad or negative. It's just kind of assume that part of this is going to be happy.
That's right. And here's one for a lot of us men out there.
Yeah.
This is a big one. I'm going to read it word for word so I don't miss it, but I already know it. But it's better to keep silent about something that is bothering me than to cause unnecessary problems in my relationship. For us guys, we like smooth sailing. We don't want to disrupt the relationship or disrupt what's going on. We like smooth, calm waters, but it's not always going to be smooth. You gotta talk about things.
Awesome. So. Here's another one, an expectation, and it's things will get better if fill in the blank. Like things will get better if we can just get through these next couple of months, or things will get better if our house if we can find the perfect house. Things will get better, or things will get better next month after we get through this month and just kind of push ahead.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's
pay off debt.
That
once we get that debt off our shoulders, everything will be just fine.
And it's almost like a fantasy, but it truly is an expectation.
That's right. And here's some good facts that we have about expectations, and we want to read these word for word because they're just really, really solid that we've learned and we've seen with all the people that we've talked to, even in our marriage. It's just they haven't been proven wrong. They're great. First one is you will be happy or disappointed based on how your expectations meet up to the reality of your marriage.
Ouch!
So if you have an expectation and it's not the reality, you're going to be disappointed.
Exactly.
If some miraculous, magical reason it is the reality, everything was going to be fine.
Exactly. Right? So one experience we had through a couple that we had, they were engaged, but they had not slept together yet, and that his expectations for what their sexual relationship was going to be was completely different than what hers was. And so it was great to get that on the table before they got married. But that's another thing that, you have a man sometimes has a different expectation than the woman does for, well, how's our sex life going to be and how often? So it's great to get these things out of on the table, no matter if you're engaged or you've been married for a while.
Absolutely. The next one is all married couples start out hoping for the best and expecting that their spouse will feel the same way about certain things as they do. Yeah. There goes the magical thing that's going to happen.
Yes.
When we get married, everything's going to be just fine.
Right. And we're going to get through the, when you think in a great way, we're going to get through this. But problems arise when you have kind of a deep-seated belief in how things should be. You have this expectation of how this is how things should be. But problems come whenever the reality of what's going on is not matching up, or it hasn't matched up in a while, and that's extremely disappointing.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And if it is something that you're holding inside, you definitely don't want to do that because it could bubble to the surface many years later and not be a pretty sight.
Yes.
So, every disappointment involves an unmet expectation.
All across the board.
All of a sudden, your woman is not doing what you thought she would do. You're going to get married, and you're like, well, we're going to be married for death to us part. We got a long time to talk about it. I don't have to really bring it up now, but it turns into a problem the first year of marriage because you didn't talk about it.
Yeah, this is so hard. And I know that sometimes there's an expectation that's placed on your spouse after you've gotten married. And maybe you've grown and changed, and you feel like they have not. And then it's like, okay, I'm going places and you're not, so let's make you change. And that expectation is kind of like the person's blindsided. Wow, okay, now I have to change because you're changing. And you see what I mean by these expectations just cause tension.
And I think we have a very good example of that you're going to share.
Yes, you want me to share it now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So early on in our relationship, and this is like literally, Andy and I dated for about a year before we tied the knot. And we were kind of young. We were young things. I was 20. You were 20.
I was like 45, I think. Something like that.
And so just a couple of weeks into our relationship, I had this idea that, well, now that we're married, Andy is going to come in and he's going to be that man of God that I really want in my relationship. He's going to pray with me, and he's going to take us to church.
I like that thumbs up.
He's going to be this spiritual leader in our household so that I can be the woman that I, really want to be. And Andy, unfortunately, had no idea of my expectations, and I didn't talk to him about it because I was kind of scared to bring it up because we didn't talk about it before we got married, and so but deep in my heart, towards him, I had a little animosity because he wasn't stepping up into that role of my expectations. And then so then I started. And then
all of a sudden, I'm sorry, but then all of a sudden we're riding in the car, and this expectation just comes out, and I'm like, "What? I didn't know you wanted that.
Right?
What was going on?"
After we were married, I'm just kind of like, "This is how things should be. Once you get married, you step up and lead the household and the spiritual leader, and I'm going to follow you." And I mean, it was just such a unmet expectation to me, and it hurt our relationship because I then started nagging him to go to church. I'm like, "Hey, let's go to find a church. Let's do this." And it was like I was really pressuring him to do that. And so what I really felt God, one of my girlfriends says, God just sits on your head sometimes and just shakes things up in your life. And it was, pretty clear to me that he was saying, God was telling me, Katie, just be quiet. Just get out of my way. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And, this was over a period of time when I felt God was just saying, Katie, just be quiet. Stop it. Get out of my way. And literally, I gave that to God. My expectation I said, God, I pray as a God, I give this up to you. I give it to you. You know what I need. You know what my heart's desire is in our relationship. And I'm just going to let it go. And I'm going to do what you want me to do and focus on my relationship with you. And literally, I just kind of laid it off. And that freed up so much tension from our relationship because I wasn't pestering you, chasing you, nagging you anymore.
That's right.
And
it wasn't something that happened overnight.
There was a process.
And the cool thing is she didn't expect it. There's a point in time where you
did not expect him to change.
To happen.
Mm-mm. I was just, I feel like when I released it to God, it was like every day I had to pray and say, I'm just going to release this. And then I realized that God wanted me to work on me and release Andy completely. And that was that's such a shocker. Doesn't it sound like such a shocker to be like, well, what if it didn't work out?
That's right.
You have to just, I learned I just had to trust God anyway.
That's right. And spoiler alert, it did happen.
I
Right?
must say,
Did it happen?
I must say, and I say this so often whenever I have the opportunity to say that Andy has not only become the man of God that I always dreamed, he has surpassed that. And I'm so thankful for God telling me to just get out of his way with my expectations and my bag of fantasies and just let God work and let Andy come in his own time and work with his own stuff out with God and let me get out of the way.
That's right. And some of my expectations, a lot less complicated. Really.
Mine was a big one, but
I just needed somebody to cook and do my laundry. No big deal. Okay, moving on.
literally.
No, that's it.
Your
That was-
expectation for me.
And it's still an expectation. It isn't big or small. It's an expectation. I just assumed we got married, and I just stopped doing
his
laundry. Man, that pile's getting kind of big. Hopefully Katie will do it. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to get her upset, but that laundry pile is getting pretty high.
And guess what? Just like my expectations on Andy didn't come to me and say, "Hey, will you do the laundry?" We never talked about it.
Nope.
I
I just assumed because
you know what I mean?
really, coming from my family, my mother did food and laundry.
Yeah.
Shout out, Mom. Thank you. So,
Yes, thank you. Now I'm doing it. No, I was just messing. But seriously, it's just great. I know our stories were true to our story, but I think that the most important part was that we did not communicate these things. And honestly, it was because for me there was a fear of how you would take it.
Of course, yeah.
And then
Same here.
yeah, so we just needed to, I think, honestly, just sit down and talk. So that's why we're such an advocate of Sunday night meetings. Our Sunday night meetings, when we feel, we ask each other, what do you want more of in the relationship? You know, how are things going?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? And we get to answer that.
That's right.
Yeah.
We all have needs and expectations, so what do we do with them? Well, we have 4 steps now
Yes.
on how to really get those out on the table and what you should do. First one is acknowledge. And on that worksheet that we provided you, it has a huge list of expectations, and it's really cool. And you can use it. There's about 18 or 19 of them. You can go through and maybe highlight, circle the ones that you want. If you're talking with your spouse, use it as an icebreaker or a third party. You know, if you kind of like, all right, let's just go through this and, you know, laugh it off and say, okay, let's just highlight, let's circle the ones that we think.
Yes.
And then you never know. You're going to be going into a conversation. You don't know how high or deep it will get, but at least you're doing it, and it's a great exercise to go through. And it's got some good facts on there and some good questions to talk about.
Yeah.
So first step is acknowledging your expectations.
And honestly, that's for awareness. That's so, I mean, even if you're here by yourself, you would love to know. It's so freeing and empowering to know, well, what do I expect from my spouse? Or what do I expect about my future spouse? And write that down.
Right.
Have a list of that so that you can know what your needs and expectations are.
That's right. And second step is release your spouse of those expectations and yourself. So when we talked about last week about reducing stress as we go through this training, this is a huge one. Releasing yourself and releasing your spouse. So not only it's a 2-for-1. You know, you both reduce your stress based on releasing those expectations on the two of you.
And let me just say, do you know how to release those expectations? Just release them. Like literally, it's that simple. There is no strategy. There's no steps to how do you release expectations. Honestly, for me, it was I had to. I prayed about it every day, and I cast my cares on God. I was like, I'm just gonna say, I just have to release Andy. I have to release him, and it was a process. So just choose to release, and regardless of how your spouse responds, you still release.
That's right. The third step is apologize. I'm sorry. You know, if it's been years, I'm sorry for putting you under those expectations. Yeah. And I feel so free now that we've talked about these and, you know, making progress, not solving them tonight.
Right.
But you're making progress, and that's the great thing.
Because you had that conversation about what your expectations were and then what your needs are, and then you can talk. Right. Just starting that conversation just beginning that step is
That's
so
right.
incredibly freeing for you and for your spouse, regardless of how they take it.
So apologize and explain that you love and appreciate them for who they are, not for who you wish them to be. Fourth one is giving to meet their needs. Being selfless. Give to meet their needs. Katie tells me her expectations. Well, I'm going to try to meet those. And I'm not going to care about mine. The best thing to release stress and release your own expectations is to not focus on yourself. Focus on the other person.
You might ask yourself, well, that's all great, Katie, Andy, but what happens if I have a legit need and it's not going to be met and it's not being met? What do I do then? And our answer is to pray about it.
Yeah.
Because we are Christians who study the Bible. And when we come across scripture that is really important to a certain topic that we share on the show, that's when we're going to share it, because my goodness, if we didn't have the knowledge that we have through scripture, it would be very difficult for us to live life at all.
We wouldn't be on Real Marriage TV
or anything
if we didn't have that.
So this verse is for you. If you feel like, you know what, I had this legit need, it's not getting met, and all this sounds great, but I'm not. I have needs, and they're not getting met. Then it's 1 Peter, chapter 5, verse 7, and all it says is, "Cast all your cares on Him, because He cares for you." So regardless of anything else in your life, we hope that you walk away from this show knowing that if you it doesn't matter what's going on in your life right now, the fact that God cares for you will never change. Is always constant through the trials, through the tribulation, through the whatever relationship stuff's going on. He always cares for you the same. So when you're at the end of your rope, cast your cares on Him, because He cares for you, and He always has, and He always will.
That's right. He's our Heavenly Father that does not judge.
Absolutely.
Imagine going to a parent who you can say anything you want to and receive zero judgment.
Nothing but love.
Or even recommendations or anything. Just, I hear you and I'm going to help you.
And He has a super awesome plan for your life. I have 100% belief and faith in that. And sometimes it's just trusting Him and releasing and letting go and moving forward and just knowing He cares for you.
That's right. This is your Sunday night meeting, talking about marriage expectations. Again, if you haven't downloaded or received the tool, go ahead and sign up. On our Facebook page is the blue button on the top right.
We would love for you to walk away creating a marriage and a relationship where giving is what your goal is every day.
Yep.
Not receiving, giving. Because if both of you are walking through your marriage like, I'm going to give today, then you're both receiving.
Yeah, and it just takes a little bit to get started. Small wins.
Small wins. And we would love to hear some of your wins, so please definitely reach out to us if you have ideas, if you have concerns, if you have comments, if you have a aha moment that you guys sat down and you're doing your little worksheet and you're like, you know what, this was really freeing, or this, I have a comment about this. Please share with us.
Yeah.
You can.
Man, we should tell Andy and Katy this.
You should, because we honestly, we thrive on these stories.
That's right, and we'll share them in Real Marriage and on TV, not with your names or anything like that, but the subjects, and it may be very helpful to somebody that's watching. So,
absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.